The vastness of space stretched before them, cold and indifferent, as the LSS Nemesis drifted through the wreckage of the latest battle. Admiral Helena Voss stood on the command deck, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. It had been weeks since the destruction of Earth, weeks of relentless fighting, and she had lost track of how many battles they had fought, how many ships they had destroyed, how many lives had been lost. Helena's face was a mask of calm, but inside, she was a storm. The Krell, the alien species responsible for the annihilation of humanity's homeworld, had underestimated Earth and its people. They had thought they could wipe out a species that thrived in chaos, a species that had fought for millennia just to survive on a hostile planet. But they were wrong. "Admiral," came the voice of Captain Zhang, her second in command, from the console behind her. "Scanners are picking up Krell ships on the perimeter of the sector. It looks like a full battle fleet." Helena turned slowly, her eyes narrowing. "How many?" 20 capital ships, at least 50 cruisers, and more fighters than we can count," Zhang replied, his voice tense. "They're moving toward our position." Helena didn't flinch. "What about our fleet?" Zhang hesitated. "We're down to 5 ships, Admiral. The rest didn't make it through the last engagement." The silence that followed was heavy, but Helena had no time for grief. She had made her peace with loss long ago. Earth was gone, her family was gone, and now all that was left was the war to avenge what had been lost, to ensure humanity would not be erased from the galaxy. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Form a defensive line. We hold this position." As Zhang relayed the orders, Helena turned her attention to the tactical display on the console before her. The Krell were advancing rapidly, their ships forming a crescent formation that was designed to envelop and crush any resistance. It was a strategy they had used before, one that had cost humanity countless ships and lives. But Helena had learned from those battles. She had learned to think like the Krell, to anticipate their moves and exploit their weaknesses. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Krell flagship," Zhang said, looking up from his console. "It's a message from their supreme commander." Helena's jaw clenched. The Krell had tried to negotiate before, but their offers had always been thinly veiled demands for surrender. She wasn't interested in surrender. "Patch it through," she said, her voice icy. The screen flickered to life, and the image of the Krell Supreme Commander appeared. He was a towering figure, his skin a mottled gray-blue, with sharp, insect-like mandibles and cold, glowing eyes. His voice, when he spoke, was harsh and guttural, like the grinding of metal. "Admiral Voss," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. "You are in a hopeless position. Your fleet is broken, your species is scattered, and your homeworld is nothing but ash. Surrender now, and we may spare the few remaining humans." Helena stared at him, her expression unreadable. "You talk about sparing us as if we need your mercy," she said, her voice calm but deadly. "But you don't understand what you've done. You didn't destroy us when you wiped out Earth. You only made us stronger." The Krell commander's mandibles clicked together in amusement. "Your defiance is pointless. You cannot win." Helena leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "You're wrong. We've already won. Because no matter what happens today, we've shown the galaxy who we really are. And when you're nothing but dust and memory, humanity will still be here." She cut the transmission before the Krell could respond. There was nothing more to say. "Admiral, the Krell fleet is accelerating," Zhang reported. "They'll be within firing range in 5 minutes." Helena turned to the crew, her voice steady. "All ships, prepare for battle. We hold the line here. This is our last stand." The crew moved with practiced precision, preparing the Nemesis for what would likely be its final fight. Helena felt the weight of the moment, the lives that hung in the balance, but she refused to let it show. She was the Admiral. She couldn't afford to waver. Minerva, the ship's AI, appeared beside her, her holographic form shimmering with blue light. "Admiral, I've analyzed the Krell formation. They're using the same strategy as before, surround and overwhelm. I've calculated a 98.7% probability that we will be overrun within the first 15 minutes of engagement." Helena nodded. What about the other 1.3%? There is a narrow window of opportunity, Minerva said. If we can concentrate our fire on the lead ships of their formation, we might disrupt their momentum and create an opening to retreat. Retreat isn't an option, Helena said, her voice hard. This is it. We either stop them here, or humanity falls. Minerva tilted her head slightly, her artificial gaze studying Helena. Then I will adjust the tactical plan to maximize our chances of success. Helena watched as the Krell fleet drew closer, their ships gleaming like dark predators against the backdrop of space. She could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken fear that hung over the bridge. Her crew was loyal, battle-hardened, but they knew the odds as well as she did. We've been here before, she said, her voice rising so that the entire bridge could hear. We've faced worse odds, and we've come out on top. The Krell think they've broken us, but they don't understand what it means to be human. We fight because we have no other choice. We fight because there is no one else who will. She met the eyes of her crew, one by one. Today we make our stand. Not just for ourselves, but for every soul they've taken. For every life they've destroyed. We fight for Earth. We fight for humanity. There was a moment of silence, then Zhong spoke, his voice low but firm. For Earth. One by one, the crew echoed the words, the resolve in their voices growing stronger with each repetition. For Earth. For Earth. For Earth. Helena turned back to the tactical display, her heart pounding in her chest. The Krell were almost within range. Fire, she ordered. The space between the Nemesis and the Krell fleet erupted in a blaze of light as the human ships unleashed everything they had. Missiles streaked through the void, followed by the bright beams of plasma cannons. The Krell responded in kind, their ships launching a barrage of energy blasts that illuminated the darkness like a storm of fire. Helena's eyes never left the tactical display. The Krell formation was holding, their ships absorbing the human attacks with terrifying efficiency. But the Nemesis and her fleet were relentless, hammering the lead Krell ships with concentrated fire. Admiral, 2 of their cruisers are down. Zhong called out. We're punching through their front line. Helena allowed herself a brief flicker of hope. Keep the pressure on. Target their flagship. As the human ships pressed forward, the Krell formation began to shift. They were adapting, closing the gaps in their lines and preparing for a counterattack. Helena knew what was coming. Brace for impact. She shouted. The Krell's retaliation was swift and brutal. Their capital ships unleashed a torrent of energy blasts, hammering the human fleet. The Nemesis shuddered violently as the shields absorbed the brunt of the attack, but the smaller ships weren't as lucky. Helena watched in horror as the Valor and the Indomitable were torn apart by the Krell onslaught, their hulls disintegrating in the blaze of enemy fire. We've lost 2 ships. Zhong yelled, his voice strained. Shields are down to 30%. Helena gripped the edge of her console, her knuckles white. Hold the line. We can't let them break through. The Nemesis shuddered again as another blast rocked the ship. The lights on the bridge flickered, and warning alarms blared, but Helena didn't flinch. She couldn't afford to. Minerva, focus all power on the forward shields, she ordered. We need to hold out just a little longer. Minerva's holographic form flickered. Rerouting power now, Admiral. But our reserves are running low. If we don't break their formation soon. I know, Helena muttered, her eyes fixed on the Krell flagship. It was their only chance. If they could take out the Krell commander, the rest of the fleet might falter. Zhong, target the flagship with everything we've got, she ordered. We're ending this now. The Nemesis surged forward, leading the remnants of the human fleet in a desperate charge. Plasma beams and missile salvos streaked toward the Krell flagship, which loomed ahead like a dark colossus. The Krell ships retaliated with a barrage of energy blasts, but the human ships pressed on, their resolve unbroken. Helena could feel the tension in her chest as the flagship drew closer. This was it. The moment of truth. If they could destroy the Krell commander, they might have a chance. Shields at 15%. Zhong called out. We can't take much more of this. Just a little longer, Helena whispered, her fingers gripping the console. Come on, you bastard. Suddenly, a blinding flash filled the viewscreen as one of the Krell's cruisers exploded. Helena's heart leaped in her chest as she saw the Krell formation faltering. Admiral, we've breached their line. Zhang shouted. We've got a clear shot at the flagship. Helena's eyes blazed with determination. All ships, target the flagship. Fire everything. The Nemesis and the remaining human ships unleashed a devastating barrage of firepower, focusing all their energy on the Krell flagship. The ship's shields flared, absorbing the brunt of the attack, but they couldn't withstand the onslaught for long. With a final, deafening explosion, the Krell flagship disintegrated, its debris scattering across the void. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, the remaining Krell ships began to retreat, their formation broken, their will shattered. They're retreating, Zhang whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. We did it. Helena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The battle was over. They had won. But at what cost? The aftermath of the battle was grim. The human fleet had been decimated, with only a handful of ships remaining. The Nemesis was battered, its hull scorched, its systems barely functioning. The loss of life was staggering. But they had survived. Humanity had survived. As the crew worked to assess the damage and tend to the wounded, Helena stood alone on the observation deck, staring out at the wreckage of the Krell fleet. The price of victory had been high, but it was a price they had been willing to pay. Minerva appeared beside her, her holographic form flickering slightly. Admiral, we've received word from the remaining human colonies. They're sending reinforcements. Helena nodded slowly, her eyes still fixed on the stars. Good. We'll need them. Minerva hesitated for a moment, then spoke again. Admiral, do you think the Krell will return? Helena's jaw tightened. I don't know. But if they do, we'll be ready. She turned away from the viewport, her heart heavy but resolute. The war was far from over, but humanity had shown the galaxy what they were capable of. They were survivors. Fighters. And they would never give up. No matter the odds.